world where truth was buried and justice was tested, one man stood unshaken, and in his hand burned the sword that never bowed to tyranny. This is not the story of a weapon. It is the legacy of the man who wielded it. Born in the Kaaba, raised in revelation, chosen by the Prophet, defender of truth. This is the story of Ali ibn Abi Talib, A.S., and Zulfiqar, the sword of justice. Movie camera subscribe now and journey through history like never before. Bell, don't forget to like, comment, and share to keep the legacy alive. Before the sound of battle, before the blade of Zulfiqar split injustice, there was silence. A sacred silence that echoed in the heart of the Kaaba. It was in that silence that Ali ibn Abi Talib A.S. opened his eyes, not in a home, not in a palace, but in the house of Allah. No one before him, and no one after him, would ever be born in that sacred place. It was as if the Kaaba itself opened its walls in sujud, bowing to the soul that would one day carry justice on his shoulders. This was no ordinary child. This was the Lion of Allah, born not just to fight, but to defend truth until his last breath. From his earliest days, Ali A.S. was surrounded by light. He didn't grow up in a world of idols or arrogance. He grew up in the house of the Prophet, SAW, raised with revelation, fed with wisdom, and rocked to sleep by verses of mercy. While other children learned to play with swords of wood, Ali, as watched the messenger pray, watched him speak to the heavens, and followed him wherever he went. The Prophet, SAW, once said, "I'm the city of knowledge, and Ali is its gate." But before he became that gate, he became the shadow of Rasulallah, SAW. When Islam was still whispered in caves, when the Quraysh mocked and tortured the believers, Ali A.S. stood firm. He was the first male to accept Islam, and unlike others, he never bowed to an idol, not even for a moment. He wasn't a warrior because of training. He became a warrior because of conviction. Because real warriors don't fight for land. They fight for truth. When the Prophet SAW was commanded by Allah to call his close family to Islam in the early days, he gathered the Banu Hashim for a meal. And when the time came to announce the truth, only one voice rose in that room. Ali, a young boy, stood up and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I will help you. I will support you." The elders laughed. The uncles mocked. But the Prophet, SAW, smiled and said, "This is my brother, my trustee, and my successor." Even as a boy, Ali A.S. accepted the weight of the mission. Years later, when the Prophet, SAW, prepared to migrate to Medina, his life was in danger. The enemies of Islam plotted to kill him in his sleep. They surrounded his home with drawn swords. And yet, someone lay in the Prophet's bed that night. It was not a bodyguard. It was not Abu Bakr. It was Ali A.S. When the Prophet asked him to sleep in his bed, knowing that death awaited, Ali A.S. didn't ask a single question. He smiled and said, "Will you be safe, O Messenger of Allah?" And with that, he lay down, wrapped in the Prophet's green cloak, fully ready to give his life so the message could live. That night, the heavens looked down, and Jibrail said to Mikael, "Who among us will sacrifice their life for another?" And Allah said, "Look at Ali, lying peacefully for the sake of my messenger." This was the man who would one day hold Zulfiqar. But before he held the sword of justice, he showed the heart of sacrifice. He showed the world that courage wasn't in muscle, it was in submission to Allah. As time passed and battles came, Ali as never once sought glory. When others questioned, he stood. When others fled, he shielded. When the Prophet called for help, Ali A.S. always answered. In the Battle of Badr, he faced the champions of Quraysh, killing Walid, Sheba, and Utbah, bringing the first victory of Islam. In Uhud, when the battlefield was drenched in betrayal and chaos, it was Ali A.S. who stood between the Prophet and the enemy, fighting until his sword broke and his body bled. The Prophet, SAW, later said, "Ali is from me, and I am from Ali." He was not just a cousin, not just a companion. He was the soul of the Prophet, wrapped in human form. But the greatest gift had yet to come. The sword of truth still waited in the skies. The sword that would become a symbol for all of time. A sword that would not just cut flesh, but split truth from falsehood. And that sword could only belong to the man who never lied, never bowed, and never ran. That sword was Zulfiqar, and it would descend only for Ali as. The desert sun rose over the fields of Ahad, but its light could not hide the shadows of betrayal. The early Muslim army, once triumphant, had collapsed in fear and confusion. Arrows rained like fire, and Quraysh fighters charged like thunder. Amid this chaos, only one figure stood tall: Ali ibn Abi Talib as, the Lion of Allah. When others dropped their swords, Ali as gripped his tighter. When others fled the messenger, SAWW, Ali as became his shield. The Prophet, SAWW, injured and alone, was surrounded. But then, the ground trembled beneath the feet of a man who feared only Allah. Ali as struck down enemy after enemy until the Prophet was safe once more. In that moment, the sky witnessed something no battle had seen before. One man defending truth while hundreds fled it. And once again, the words of Rasulullah, SAWW, echoed through the battlefield. All of the faith has gone out to face all of the disbelief. He was not exaggerating. He was describing Ali as. But soon, an even greater battle would arrive. The Muslims under siege, a trench dug to protect the city. But one man, Imam Ali, leapt over the trench, laughing. Arrogant, armed, feared by all, he challenged the Muslims, calling out for a warrior. Silence. Again he called. Silence. A third time, and then the voice of youth. Ali as rose to his feet. He asked the Prophet, SAWW, for permission to fight. The Prophet, with tears in his eyes, gave him his sword and his prayer. O Allah, aid him, support him, and return him to me safe. Ali as walked into the field, alone, to face a giant. Dust rose, swords clashed, and moments later, silence. The dust settled, and only one figure remained standing, the Lion of Allah. Amr was gone. The threat was ended. And once again, the Prophet said, "The strike of Ali on the day of Kondak is greater than the worship of all humans and jinn until the day of judgment." But why? Why did one strike hold more value than a lifetime of worship? Because Ali's sword did not serve personal pride. It served divine purpose. And Allah was preparing something even greater for him. Then came a year of Karbala, a fortress strong with walls, stronger with arrogance. The Muslims had tried everything. The strongest men had attempted to breach the gates, but none succeeded. Then, on a quiet night, the Prophet, SAWW, made a promise. "Tomorrow, I shall give the banner to a man who loves Allah and his messenger, and Allah and his messenger love him. He will not return until Allah opens Karbala through him." The next morning, companions gathered with hopeful hearts. But the Prophet, SAWW, called out, "Where is Ali?" They told him Ali was suffering from an eye infection, his eyes swollen shut. The Prophet, SAWW, asked that Ali be brought to him. He then took his blessed saliva and gently applied it to Ali's eyes. In an instant, the pain vanished. His sight returned, stronger than ever. The flag was handed to him. The time had come, and now he would need a sword worthy of divine justice. And so it was that Zulfiqar descended, not from a blacksmith's forge, but from the heavens. It was no ordinary sword. Historians write that it had a bifurcated blade, 2 points like the tongue of truth and justice, sharp and swift. This was the weapon that symbolized mercy for the oppressed, death for the oppressor, light in darkness. It was not given to Ali because he was the strongest. It was given to him because he was the most just. And on that day, with Zulfiqar in hand, Ali approached the gates of Karbala. The fortress laughed. The soldiers jeered. They had no idea they were about to witness a miracle. Ali fought Marhab, the infamous champion of Karbala. a man whose armor weighed more than most men. Marhab roared, "I am Marhab, known for valor and weaponry. Warriors know me on the battlefield." Ali, as replied with calm thunder, "I am the one whose mother named him Haidar, the lion. I break foes, I don't retreat." And then Zulfiqar struck. With a single blow, Marhab fell, and the gates of Karbala began to tremble. Ali, in a moment of divine strength, ripped the massive iron gate from its hinges and used it as a shield. The Muslims surged forward. Victory was granted. The stronghold of arrogance had fallen to a sword from the skies, wielded by the hand of justice. Zulfiqar had made its mark, and the world would never forget the name. Ali ibn Abi Talib, A.S., the only man worthy to carry the sword of truth. The sound of swords quieted, but the test of justice had just begun. The Prophet Muhammad, SAW, the mercy to the worlds, had left this world, and with his departure, so too had the anchor of unity. The streets of Medina were filled with confusion, tears, and fear. People did not know where to turn. Hearts shattered, loyalties were tested, and truth was buried under dust, even before the Prophet's body had returned to dust. But in the corner of that home, beside the grieving Fatima Zura, sat Ali, A.S., silent, steady, and calm like a mountain beneath a storm. Zulfiqar, the sword that had split falsehood in battle, now rested quietly, because this battle was not with blades, it was with patience. Ali, as did not rush for power. He did not draw his sword when others claimed what was his. He was not weak. He was wise. He remembered the words of the Prophet, SAW, whispered to him, "O Ali, your position to me is like Harun to Musa, except that there is no prophet after me." And like Harun, Ali, A.S., bore betrayal with silence, because Islam was still young, and he would never let Zulfiqar fall upon the neck of a Muslim, even if injustice called for it. Not out of fear, out of love. Love for Rasulullah, SAW, and the unity of the Ummah he left behind. Years passed. Pain mounted. Fatima Zura, left the world with broken ribs and an unspoken will. And still, Ali, A.S., held Zulfiqar back. Because a sword, no matter how sharp, cannot force hearts to see the truth. Ali, as waited. He farmed. He taught. He guided quietly behind the scenes. When others ruled, they came to his door for answers. And yet, he never once humiliated them. He knew true justice waits with dignity. And then came the time when the people, finally exhausted by chaos, came running to him. They cried out, "O Ali, we need your leadership." And reluctantly, after years of silence, Ali, A.S., accepted the caliphate. But what he inherited was not a kingdom. It was a fractured ummah, stained by power-hungry rulers, greed, and injustice. And now, Zulfiqar would rise again. The Battle of Jamal, the Battle of Siffin, the Battle of Narawan. Not battles for land, not wars for gold. These were wars for the soul of Islam. In Jamal, his opponents were fellow Muslims, misled, misguided, manipulated. Ali, A.S., gave every chance for peace. He sent letters, envoys, offered dialogue. But when swords were raised, he defended the truth with Zulfiqar in hand. Even when his enemies were companions. Even when the battlefield echoed with familiar names. Zulfiqar did not strike with emotion. It struck with divine precision. And when the dust settled, Ali, A.S., wept for those who had fought him, for he never enjoyed victory. He only sought truth. Then came Siffin, where truth and politics clashed with fury. His opponent? Muawiyah, the governor of Sham, and the beginning of dynastic rule in Islam. Again, Ali, A.S., offered peace. Again, he was met with arrogance. And when war broke, Zulfiqar shone once more, cutting through not just soldiers, but the lies that were spreading through the Ummah like poison. The battle raged for days. Blood soaked the land. Victory was near, but the enemy raised Qurans on spears, a trick to confuse the Muslims. Ali, as warned them, it is paper without faith. It is manipulation, but many of his own men hesitated. They forced him to stop. Ali, A.S., was denied victory, not by the enemy, but by the very people he was trying to save. Zulfiqar was forced back into its sheath. And the saddest moment of that battle was not the blood spilled, it was the truth ignored. Then came Narawan, where the Khawarij, once his followers, now declared him a disbeliever. He tried again, letters, sermons, calls for mercy. But when they murdered innocent Muslims, the time came. Ali A.S. rose, not with anger, but with sorrow. And with Zulfiqar, he ended their rebellion. He said, "O people, this is what happens when religion is separated from wisdom." Ali A.S. fought only when forced. And even in war, he remained the most merciful of warriors. There's a story, one of many. In a duel, his enemy spit on Ali's blessed face. Ali A.S. paused, lowered his sword. The enemy was stunned. Ali A.S. said, "I fight for Allah, not for my ego. When you spit, you made it personal. And I do not fight for myself. Tell me, what sort of fights like that?" Only Zulfiqar, only in the hands of Ali A.S. But Zulfiqar's greatest battle was not on the battlefield. It was in Kufa, in the darkness of night, when Ali S., the caliph of the Muslims, would walk alone, feeding the orphans, carrying food on his back, hiding his identity so the poor wouldn't feel ashamed. Zulfiqar didn't need blood to prove its power. Its real legacy was justice, kindness, God consciousness, and no blade in history ever cut so deeply into the hearts of those who witnessed its bearer. Ali A.S. was not just a warrior with a sword. He was a light with a soul. And Zulfiqar was not just steel. It was divine trust, placed in the only hands worthy of it. It was a silent night in Kufa. The stars, witnesses to centuries of history, shimmered above a small, humble house. Inside, the Lion of Allah, Ali ibn Abi Talib, A.S., had just risen from his bed. He washed his hands and face, wrapped his turban, and picked up a bag of food for the poor. Zulfiqar did not hang on his waist, because tonight the battle was not of swords. It was a battle of truth versus betrayal. Ali, as stepped outside his home and walked alone. His sons, Hussain A.S. and Hussain A.S., wanted to walk with him, but he refused gently. "Tonight, I go alone to the house of my beloved." The streets of Kufa were still. The masjid loomed in the darkness like a sleeping fortress. Ali A.S. entered, called the adhan, and stood for prayer, like he had done thousands of times before. But this time, the earth held its breath. As Ali A.S. went into sajda, the heavens trembled. A man named Ibn Muljam, fueled by hatred and paid by cowards, crept forward with a poisoned sword in his trembling hand. And then, the strike. A coward's blade met the head of the bravest man to ever walk this earth. The masjid echoed with a cry, "By the Lord of the Kaaba, I am successful." Blood poured. Angels wept. The sword that once split justice from falsehood had now fallen silent. Zulfiqar remained sheathed, because this was not a battle that needed a blade. The days that followed were filled with mourning. Imam Hassan A.S. and Imam Hussain A.S. wept beside their father, who whispered advice, love, and farewell. Fear Allah, and do not run after the world, even if it runs after you. Be a voice for the oppressed, and an enemy to the oppressor. These were not the words of a dying man. They were the seeds of revolution. And then, Ali A.S., the man born inside the Kaaba, returned to his creator, not on a throne, not in a palace, but in sajda, in submission, the same way he had lived. Zulfiqar was wrapped, hidden. Never again would it be wielded in this world, because it was not a sword made for worldly rulers. It was made for the hand of the just, the brave, the pure. The narrations are many, but the truth is this. Zulfiqar was passed down, not just as a weapon, but as a symbol of truth and Imamate. To Imam Hassan A.S., to Imam Hussain A.S., through each of the 12 Imams A.S., its legacy continued. But Zulfiqar, as a sword, was not always drawn, because its true power was not in the blade. It was in the principles it defended. Then came Karbala, The plains burned under the sun, and injustice had returned in its ugliest form. Imam Hussain A.S., the beloved grandson of the Prophet SAWW, stood with 72 companions against an army of thousands. Though Zulfiqar was not there physically, the spirit of Zulfiqar was in every strike, every prayer, every stand Hussain A.S. made, especially in the hands of one man, the commander of the army of Karbala, Abbas ibn Ali A.S. He was not just the son of Ali A.S. He was the reflection of Zulfiqar, unmatched bravery, unshakable loyalty, unbreakable faith. When Abbas A.S. rode to the river to fetch water for the thirsty children, even the river shook in fear. And though his arms were severed, his heart remained steady. He fell not because he was weak, but because his mission was not to win. It was to fulfill a promise made in the name of justice. Zulfiqar lived on through him. And today, Zulfiqar waits. It waits not in a museum, not in a storybook, but in the unseen hands of the Imam of our time, Al-Mahdi, A.J. He is the bearer of Zulfiqar now, and when he rises, the sword of Ali, A.S., shall return to cleanse the world of oppression and injustice. That day the earth will shake, truth will rise, falsehood will be cut in two, and Zulfiqar will shine once more, not as a weapon of war, but as a light of divine justice. Ali, as never ruled with iron. He ruled with mercy. He never killed for pride. He fought for principle. He never drew his sword for personal gain. He used it only to protect the message of Allah and the Prophet, SAWW. Zulfiqar was not sharp because of its steel. It was sharp because of the hand that held it. And today, we don't just remember Zulfiqar as a sword. We remember it as a standard, a measure of truth, a beacon of justice, a reminder that courage lives in silence and strength lives in submission to Allah. Ali, as did not become great because of Zulfiqar. Zulfiqar became great because of Ali, A.S. And when the time comes, and the final call of truth is made, Zulfiqar will rise again in the hand of Al-Qaim, A.J., and the world will once again know what justice looks like. When the sword of Ali, as meets the oppressors of time, Ali, A.S., is not just a name, he is a path. Zulfiqar is not just a sword, it is a symbol. And the day is near when the awaited one, Imam Mahdi, A.J., will rise with Zulfiqar once more to bring peace where there is pain, light where there is darkness, and justice where the world has forgotten what it means. Folded hands, thank you for watching. If this story moved you, let your heart be the voice. Like, share, and subscribe.